So here we are in Australia with female participation significantly lower than the Scandinavian countries. If we wanted to fix this, we could, but we're not fixing it. We're giving tax cuts to high income blokes. Hi, I'm Richard Dennis.
And I'm Matt Grudnoff.
And we're economists. Matt, what's our first question today?
Well, our question today is, can the stage 3 tax cuts lead to higher economic growth?
In theory, economists believe that giving people a wage rise or giving people a tax cut gives them more incentive to work.
So they spend less time hanging around watching Netflix and they want to work because it's worth more.
Exactly. And so we think the unemployed are unemployed because they don't have enough incentive to get out there and look. But we never think that offering them higher wages might solve that problem. No. But when it comes to rich people, they respond to incentives. So the government's stage 3 income tax cuts, which are heading our way in a couple of years, will mean that people earning over $200,000 a year are going to get more than $9,000 a year in tax cuts. I mean, that's a lot of incentive, Matt.
That's a big incentive.
That's a big incentive. So people earning over $200,000 a year who are probably already working full-time, maybe.
Well, I don't know too many part-timers who earn 200K.
Well, apparently people earning 200 grand a year are going to have a big incentive to work more soon. And the government's so excited about this, they're saying, what a great way to stimulate the economy. But,
well, hang on, wait. So are we sure that stage 3 tax cuts actually go to high income earners?
Well, I think we are. Have we got some data?
Let's have a look at our first graph.
Let's go to the screen. Matt, what do we got here?
All right, so down the bottom we've got deciles. So they basically break all of the taxpayers up into 10 equal groups. So we've got the lowest income earners in decile 1 and the next 10% of lowest income earners in decile 2.
And up here's the richest 10%.
That's right.
I think I see a pattern emerging here.
Absolutely, and this is the proportion of the tax cuts that each decile gets. So the bottom decile gets 0.0%, nothing.
Nothing. Donuts.
So the bottom 20% get nothing too, because the second decile gets 0.0. And then as we go up, it grows a little bit until the end, then it shoots up.
So the top 10% of taxpayers, or top 10% of income earners in Australia are going to get more than half of the stage 3 tax cuts.
Yep, so these stage 3 tax cuts are massively biased to high income earners.
Right, and the government's saying this will stimulate the economy because people who are unemployed but earning more than $200,000 a year will have an incentive to get a job.
Yep.
Okay, that's a big category.
Yep.
Or maybe the part-time workers earning more than $200,000 might go out and work longer hours.
Again, probably a small group.
Probably not the big group. Matt, are there other ways to stimulate people to get a job than giving tax cuts to these people?
So while we know that high income earners are not likely to change their working behaviour because of a tax cut.
Because they already have a full-time job.
That's right, but there is a group that will change their behaviour if you increase their income. And that's usually the second earner in a family that are raising children.
Right, so in a family, by second earner, you mean the person who's working part-time or whose income is lower than the other partner.
Yeah, and they're usually working part-time because they're juggling work and caring responsibilities.
And let's be clear, in Australia, because of our culture and because of our policy settings, these are disproportionately women, right?
That's right, yeah, they're mainly women, but these are the income earners that if you made it easier for them to look after their children, or if you increase their income, they are likely to change their behaviour and actually go out and start working more.
You mean if childcare in Australia was free or much cheaper than it is, a lot more parents would actually work and use care?
That's exactly right. Now,
hang on, this is crazy stuff. You mean lowering the price of something means people would buy more of it?
That's right.
Just like economics.
But if they use it, this is an economic issue, because if those second income earners, mostly women, used it, then that would actually expand our GDP because there'd be more participation in the labour market.
So let's be clear, giving tax cuts to really high income earners, most of whom are blokes, is going to have very little impact on what we call the labour supply, because most of these people, most of whom are blokes, are already working full time. They're not going to go and seek a second job or work longer hours because of a tax cut. what might a radical solution to this be?
Yeah, look, if we offered cheap or free, high quality early education and care, then absolutely we could induce more people to enter the labour force, particularly those second income earners who are mostly women, and that would increase economic growth in Australia.
You mean it might be more effective than giving high income blokes a tax cut?
Absolutely. There are countries around the world that actually do this really, really well, and that's Nordic countries. They include Iceland, Denmark, Finland, Sweden and Norway. And what I want to do now is have a look at participation rates in these kind of countries. So the first one we have here...
What's a participation rate, Matt?
Okay, so a participation rate is the proportion of people within a particular group that are in the labour force, that are out there looking for work or have a job.
Right, so the number of people aged 15 to 19 that have got a job or want one, it's around a bit over half, but 35 to 39-year-olds, 90% have either got a job or are looking for a job.
And this is male participation rates in Australia.
Right.
So we can see over time it's quite low when they're studying. It peaks up there at above 90%, and then eventually when they get to retirement age, it comes down.
Right.
Now the next...
And this is blokes.
This is blokes. So let's also look at Nordic blokes. So this is the average participation rate for Nordic blokes.
Looks about the same.
It's pretty much exactly the same. A little bit lower early on, a little bit higher afterwards, but roughly the same. Okay, so blokes, Australian blokes and Nordic blokes tend to have roughly the same participation rates. So let's look at women now. This is women in Australia.
So the participation rate of women in Australia, like men, it rises when they're young, but it drops here, 25 to 29, 30. Presumably because leaving the labour market to care for kids.
Exactly right. So this is the age when most households are raising young families, and it actually drops. There's a dip in this participation rate.
And it never gets as high as the 90% that blokes had.
No, for females. So let's now look at Nordic countries' female participation rate.
Ooh.
Okay, very, very different. There is no drop. In fact, it looks very similar to the male participation rate.
And quite similar to the Australian male participation rate at nearly 90%.
That's exactly right. So it goes up for young women. Okay, then when the family reaches sort of child age, it drops.
There's no dip.
And then it recovers a little bit, but it never gets as high as the female participation rate for Nordic countries.
But also it never dips.
It never dips once.
Not until retirement. Right, so Scandinavian, Nordic women's the experience in the labour market is really quite radically different from Australian women's.
Yeah, and we did some research where we looked at, well, what if Australia had the same male and female participation rates as Nordic countries? What would that be worth to the economy? And what we found out is it would be worth an extra $60 billion every year in additional income if Australia had the same participation rates as Nordic countries.
So you don't think this is all about income taxes for people earning over $200,000 a year driving this, Matt?
Surprisingly not, no.
Right. So let's be clear, in Australia we could, if we wanted to, offer free childcare in the way that the Nordic countries do. But we're not doing that. We're offering enormously expensive income tax cuts to people earning over $200,000 a year, most of which are blokes. Now, if we wanted to close this gap, it would not only boost GDP, as Matt said, but it would also close the gender pay gap that we see in Australia, because so many women are working part-time, or women feel quite rightly that they're actually disadvantaged in the labour market. When they come back to work, people say, well, you don't have as much experience as these other people. This is not happening in the Scandinavian countries. So if, and it's a big if, we wanted to fix this problem, I think we could look to other countries to figure out how to do it. You know, we're a liberal democracy. This is about choice. This is about making sure that all parents, whether they're men or women, can pursue the choices that they think suits them and their family the best. Now, what we can see is that the participation rate of women in the Nordic countries is a bit below men. So there must be some women there who want to stay at home and care for their kids. That's great. That's fine. But with free childcare, that's a very easy choice that they can make.
That's a choice they can actually make.
They can afford to make any choice they prefer.
When my youngest was 4 years old, I was a single parent, and my parents actually had to come and live with us in order to look after the kids. And that was great because I got along with my parents, even after living for a year. And they were able to do that. They were retired. But if they hadn't, then I wouldn't have been able to stay in the workforce as long. And so if I'd had free childcare, then I would have had that option.
And you wouldn't have had to live with your parents.
Yeah, exactly right. It's families that benefit from this, whether it's men or women. It gives them the choice. It enables them to be able to make a decision about whether or not they want to stay at home and look at the kids, or whether or not they want to come in and work.
With free childcare, that's a cheap choice that you can make. And it's also a cheap choice if you decide, you know what, actually I want to return to work. But in Australia, we're using expensive childcare as a very big barrier to a lot of parents, mainly women, who find that re-entering the labour force isn't cheap, it's not flexible, it's not convenient. But if we fixed it, then we can not only give a lot more parents choice, but we can actually have a bigger, wealthier economy as well.
Now, Richard, didn't we write a book recently about this?
As luck would have it, The Nordic Edge is a recent book published by the Australia Institute and Melbourne University Press, which spells out a whole bunch of areas where the Nordic countries give us great examples that we could, if we wanted to, follow. We always hear in Australia about how taxes are low in America or wages are low in some part of Asia and we have to be like them. But actually there are high income, high wage, high tax countries in Northern Europe who have quite different economic and social outcomes than we do. And if we wanted to follow them down that road, we could.
And Richard, not only are they some of the highest wealth and highest income countries in the world, they're also the happiest countries in the world.
Wow, rich, happy and far less unequal than we are in Australia. Maybe there's something we could learn from them. We make these videos to help give you more information, more arguments and more tools to engage in public debate in Australia. If you like them, please subscribe, please like them, please share them, and if you've got any questions for us, send them in.